Hey, this is Andrea.
And this is Amanda.
And you're listening to
Girls Nerd Out. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am Amanda, and we also have Andrea.
Hello.
I'm going to let Andrea yet again explain the name of the episode. I didn't even plan on this being a thing, but it is now because the episodes don't have a name until later. So go ahead, Andrea, let them know.
Okay, so when I watched at 9 o'clock, I clicked and I noticed for episode 6 there wasn't a name, and I was like, "Oh, great! That means they're gonna change it later." So then today, when I rewatched it, I noticed that it said Smallfolk, which I'm sorry, I get that most of the story in this episode was about the Smallfolk, but that's a dumb name. That's a very dumb name.
Look, Regent was the last one. Smallfolk is this one. Again, if you guys can't come up with a name, Andrea and I are more than happy to help you. Just reach out to us because we could do better than that. I'm just saying. So what we're going to do is we are going to kind of go in order of character because there's a lot of back and forth in this episode. So to make it kind of cohesive, we'll do that. And not shockingly, we are going to start with Andrea's fave, the Queen, Rhaenyra.
Yes. We see Corlys. He's looking and he puts on his handpin, which I really liked. And then they bring in Sir Stefan Darklyn, who is part of Rhaenyra's Queen's Guard. She basically tells him, hey, I found out that you have, was it Valyrian blood or Targaryen blood? I couldn't remember. I think it's Targaryen blood.
Yeah, it's Targaryen blood because she was looking at some books and she did some research. And I think it was, 2 grandmothers back, there was a Targaryen.
Yeah, some made-up Targaryen chick. Book is going to be different from show, I guess, now. So
very.
She's like, well, we need more help because Rhaenys is dead and Meleys is dead and they need another dragon. I mean, Meleys was their biggest dragon. And Daemon's off doing you-know-what in the Riverlands. So she doesn't have him. So she makes the decision to get dragon seeds. She says he doesn't have to do it.
Okay, so Jace is basically telling her, it was last episode, I think, hey, we've got dragons. We need to do something with them. Season 1, Daemon brought it up, actually, that we've got dragons with no riders. She gives it a lot of thought and does the research, like you said.
Yes.
And apparently Darklyn has some Targaryen blood, which doesn't necessarily mean Valyrian. No. That's the thing. Targaryen is a house. Valyrian is blood and genetics. Targaryen is your last name. Valyrian is the reason you have silver hair and purple eyes, basically. I did like the fact that she does not lie to him. She says, this is under great peril. This has not been done. He makes the statement that we've heard before that the dragons are gods, and I really don't know where that's coming from. I understand that they're magic. I don't understand where the god thing comes from. That's just show only.
Somebody in Game of Thrones says that the Targaryens are closest, or no, the Rhaenyra says that the Targaryens are closest to gods and men, right?
Yeah, but it still doesn't make any sense that random people, highborn and low, would think the dragons are gods. That's something that the show came up with that doesn't make sense.
And it's not the first time they've said it. They said it last episode too. So that's very interesting. They show the dragon keepers. They're all singing that song that Daemon sings to Vermithor at the end of season 1. And I thought it was very haunting hearing that. It was very cool, but haunting.
As soon as I heard the beginning of that, I was like, yes, because I love that song. They didn't do it as well as Daemon, but it was haunting. That's what I call the dragon pit stop, because that's where any dragon coming in and the rider dismounting, that's where they go. And then apparently now we know that's also where they sing to the dragons to get them to come up.
So are we going to see that every time? I'm curious.
Damon sings that song to Vermithor. Now, you and I speculated that that song could have been passed down, and possibly Damon heard that from his father or his grandfather. Well, now it seems like all the Dragon Keepers know that song. The dragons know that song. I thought it was just specifically to Vermithor, so I thought Vermithor was going to come up. No, that is a song for any dragon.
So maybe it's passed down to not just the Targaryens, but the Dragon Keepers.
It definitely has to be. And I'll be honest with you, I bet every Dragon Keeper knows that song, but not every Targaryen does. But Daemon does because Daemon loves dragons.
I have a feeling that none of the Hightower kids, they're more Hightowers than Targaryens. I bet they don't know the song. Maybe Aemond, but definitely not Aegon.
Oh, you're right on that deal. If one knew it, it would be Aemond. Aegon doesn't even know High Valyrian. So I thought it was going to be Vermithor. No, it's Sea Smoke. And he does look different. He definitely looks different.
We're going to see Vermithor probably next episode, though, it looks like, from the trailer. But yeah, Sea Smoke does look a lot different from season 1, and I'm not too thrilled about that.
I did some research, and I'm pretty sure I know why. Sea Smoke in season 1, he actually had like a little bit of like a goatee, and he is like a really pale gray with touches of red. The Sea Smoke that came out of the Dragonmont, he is just gray. He's very gray. It's like a medium gray, and I didn't see any traces of red, which was really surprising to me. And that's why a lot of people online were saying that was Dreamfire or Silverwing, because it doesn't look like Sea Smoke. That's been debated for weeks.
No, longer than that, because I remember when we first saw the trailer with this dragon coming up that we didn't know who it was. People kept saying it's obviously Dreamfire. Well, clearly not. Why would Dreamfire be a Dragonstone, you know? Like, doesn't make any sense.
No, so it's not Dreamfire. It's not Silverwing. It's Sea Smoke. And as nerdy as this is, later on, when Sea Smoke makes a very specific move to get closer to someone, it looked familiar. And I was able to find the seed where it's Drogon at Dragonstone, and he gets closer and closer to get to Jon Snow. It's reused CGI. That's the reason Sea Smoke looks different. It's so they could reuse Drogon CGI. They just did like an image reversal and changed the horns and the color. But I matched it up, and I don't know why they're doing that, but that's the reason why they changed Sea Smoke. It's so that he would line up perfectly with Drogon.
They're very inconsistent with the dragons, because I still feel like Caraxes is a little smaller than last season. They're very inconsistent with Cyrax, and now they've completely changed what Sea Smoke looks like. He's still cool. I love him, but I'm not happy with it.
Without consistency, it's hard to know which dragon it is, know which storyline that dragon comes from, and especially like people that aren't obsessed with dragons, they're going to be confused. Sea Smoke acts like he's good with Darkland. I knew it wasn't going to go well. I just knew it. And he's kind of like getting close to him, sniffing him out. And then Sea Smoke submits. He lays down, stretches out his neck, lowers his head. And obviously, Darkland is going to think, oh, I've just bonded with a dragon. Because, I mean, like, no one knows what it feels like unless you've done it. Here's the strange thing. Sea Smoke submitting like that and being vulnerable doesn't make sense.
No.
Because it's the equivalent of a dog showing their belly. It's here's my weakness. And I know they love shock value, and that's why it was done, but it doesn't make sense for the dragon, because he shows his weakness, submits, and then not only does he turn on Darkland, he takes out the Dragon Keepers too. And that was a bit of a shock, because one Dragon Keeper was savage and he didn't want to just burn to death. So he takes out a knife and he slits his own throat. Woo! After that, we have a really, really cool scene with Rhaenyra. You want to talk about that?
Yes. So Rhaenyra gets upset because of Sir Darkland being dead, obviously. One of her council members said, like, kind of told you so sort of situation. And she got pissed. And she's like, you have forgotten that you need to fear me. And then she walks off and goes and picks up a sword. She is a queen. And I wish she would just say that. I'm the queen. You listen to me, you know? And Rhaenyra looked awesome with the sword. I mean, even Massaria says it looked good on her having a sword. So, I mean, I know what they're doing there, but.
And go ahead, go right into that with Massaria.
So then we have a scene where her and Massaria are talking about Daemon, because everyone just constantly is telling her she needs Daemon. But Rhaenyra does feel like she's losing him. And then Massaria, she sees that she's hurting and she's being open with her. So she's going to be open with Rhaenyra. She talks about her scar that she has around her neck. And that is from her father. Her father did some horrible things to her. And she can never have kids because of her father. Rhaenyra feels horrible for her. And she goes up and hugs her. I think she's just trying to comfort her in the best way that she can. And Massaria says that Rhaenyra is the queen. There's this moment where they are into each other and they start kissing. Do I like that it was right after the trauma situation? No, but it's not out of nowhere, because Rhaenyra and Massaria all season has been very not necessarily flirty, but they've been very close. They like each other. It's obvious.
They do. They have really good chemistry. And Massaria is very smart because she comes up with an incredible idea.
Yes.
She tells Rhaenyra that the people are starving, and then it cuts like the size of like a fisherman's boat. And you're like, what's going on? And then you see it's food, but not only is it food, it's food with Rhaenyra's banner. So
Yes.
they know where it came from.
But who closed the gates? Who doesn't let these people leave? The Greens. They didn't try to get any other sources, like you said, if you want to go into that.
Last podcast, I could not figure out why they didn't have High Garden sending food, because if the ports aren't getting anything, I mean, that's the Reach. It's the most fertile land there is. And I wondered about that. Well, lo and behold, Allison asked if High Garden has responded to any of the ravens and is told no. So that is why they're not getting food from High Garden, and that is on them. They should have thought of that a long time ago. They should have been talking to the Reach way in advance. After that, we get into a very interesting bit with Rhaena, who I like very much.
Her dress was beautiful.
She's beautiful. Dress was beautiful. And she is, of course, in the veil.
Yes.
And you can tell right off the bat, she's not happy. She's restless. Rhaena is struggling because she doesn't have a dragon. It has bothered her for quite some time. And I'm sure it probably bothers her to be around the eggs and the baby dragons. And we find out that they're all meant to go to Pentos.
Yes.
For safety reasons. Turns out Lady Erin had a little bit of a secret. Rhaena's smart. So she's walking around and she gets to a large scorched place where the grass is gone, it is black, and there's random bones. When Daenerys gets on Drogon and leaves the fighting pits, he takes her to a place that looked just like that. And she is putting things together like, wait a minute, there's only one thing that could do this. And the camera pulls back, which is really cool, and you can see a sheep skull. And what does that mean, Andrea, if it's a sheep skull and there's dragon fire?
There's a dragon in the veil. It's Sheepstealer, and Sheepstealer is a wild dragon. Now, why he's hanging out in the veil is probably because there's a lot more sheep for him to eat and steal than over in Dragonstone.
And, he has no competition.
Nope.
Because there's more than one wild dragon. I don't know if we'll see him or not. But this is confirmation Nettles will not be in House of the Dragon, sadly. If they were going to give that story to someone, I'm glad it's Rhaena. I'll say that.
She's going to want to bond with that dragon. She's not going to leave now because she wants a dragon very badly.
Speaking of Blood of the Dragons, next we're going to talk about Andrea's boyfriend. I'll just say it this way. Daemon M.F. Targaryen.
So the first time we see him in this episode, he is having a vision of Viserys, and I really loved it. We saw Viserys sitting on the throne, and he's talking about the heir for a day. This confirms that Daemon did say it. And Daemon, obviously, at first, he's like, how can you still be upset about this? But then he gets really, really sad. And it's very good acting by both Matt and Patty. And then he sends Daemon away. He says, you're no longer my heir. I'm going to send you back to Runestone with your wife. So he gets exiled. He regrets saying heir for a day. I believe he does.
He looked devastated. It was probably something he said because he was around the City Watch drinking. He gets sent away. He looks so sad. He's confronting his deepest, darkest regrets.
It's a very reoccurring theme in these visions. It's all centered around Rhaenyra too, not just Viserys. I think people are misunderstanding the visions. He has his own journey to take, and this is it. Like, he's obviously losing control of reality, it looks like, and his emotions. This is a wake-up call. This is a huge wake-up call, I think.
Do you want to talk about the next vision?
That one, I think, is probably the worst one. Yes, I even think it's worse than him cutting off Rhaenyra's head. Emma is dead, and Viserys is crying, and Daemon was never there for Viserys when Emma died, and I think he definitely regrets that because Viserys very much loved his wife, and Daemon was never there for him when she died. He had to leave, you know. He starts to cry, he gets very emotional, and I think it's because he realizes that I couldn't be there for my brother for anything. My brother died, and there was nothing they could do for him. And I think he's just very regretful of everything he did before his brother died and after.
And he actually gets to heal that because he embraces Viserys and is basically like, I'm here now. And that needed to happen for him. I'll tell you this, though. Daemon walks outside because he's like, what is this? Doesn't he say something's wrong with me? And of course, Freaky Alice is there with an owl, obviously. The best part, though, is Caraxes. He immediately raises his head. He's very excited. He's like, we're finally getting out of here. This is great. Thank you. And he doesn't stop making noises the entire time.
He lets him know, I am pissed that we're still here. He does. I wonder how these dreams are affecting Caraxes. That's probably why he wants to leave, because it's affecting him too. At some point, Caraxes mounts the wall. Like, he is ready to go.
Yeah, because Caraxes is definitely getting something out of this. He's either feeling weird or he's seeing the visions too. He just wants to go back to his dragon wife, Syrax. I don't blame him.
I just wanted to touch a little bit about like what Alice and Daemon were talking about. Rhaenyra didn't want the throne, but then Alice says maybe that's why Viserys picked her. Everybody's vying for the throne and she isn't interested, and maybe that's the best part. The throne is not a prize to be won, it is a burden to bear. And then she says that Viserys didn't want it either, but he did his best.
There are some people that think Alice is like Melisandre. Some people think she is Melisandre. The actress herself has said that she is somewhere between 40 and 400. Here's the thing. Melisandre saw pieces and visions in the flame. Alice is seeing his entire life. It's different.
Yeah, it's very different.
Melisandre is fire magic. She sees visions from R'hllor. Whatever Alice is, this is old gods. This is werewoods. This is something akin to Greenseer, but more. If you want to just label it, it's old magic. It's earth magic. That's what it is. It has nothing to do with fire. Daemon's the fire. Alice is not. After that, we go to see Alan.
Mm-hmm.
And I am so tickled because he is shaving his head, and his brother's like, "You're not fooling anybody." And I started screaming. I knew he had white hair. I knew he had white hair. I knew it.
Yes, you did. Hoping at some point he tells Rhaenyra to legitimize both Adam and Alan. Do we want to talk about Sea Smoke and Adam now?
Yes. Everybody was very fond of this.
Some people laughed at it, but I didn't. I was like screaming at my TV. I woke up my house. I will just say my favorite part. He's coming around and Adam is looking up and Sea Smoke looks directly at him. Like his head is turned toward Adam, flying really fast, and he knocks him down and everything. It's so cool because dragons are choosing their riders. That's what happens. I know people get that mixed up, but dragons choose the rider.
You know, here we go again. In the books, Drogon comes to the fighting pits not to save Daenerys. It's because he smells blood.
Yes.
He gets in the dragon pit. Daenerys grabs a whip. She starts using the whip on him to get his attention. And in the show, they did it very well. Drogon has a big, scary roar, and she doesn't flinch. And that's when they bond. Drogon is the one that's like, okay, yes, it's you. Fine, let's go. Same with Sea Smoke. Sea Smoke's like, hey, you know, I love the fact that you're running. That's great for you, but you really don't have a choice in this.
Nope.
And I liked that he looked terrified, and then he looked a little bit more calm, and then he looked puzzled, and that showed that the bond was happening. I loved that very much. Like, a person can have a favorite dragon and wish to bond with that dragon, but it's the dragon that picks. And dragons are not passed down. Dragons pick who they want.
After the scene where Rhaenyra and Mysaria kiss, they are told that Sea Smoke is seen flying around Spicetown. Rhaenyra's like, well, yeah, he does that. And they're like, no, he is a rider. And she gets upset and she goes off. My opinion, should she have left? No. I think she should have taken Jace or Bela. Like, I really like her writing for this episode, but not that part. I was like, no, Rhaenyra wouldn't go by herself. And she is pissed. She is yelling at Adam. And I don't blame her for that. But I think they're going to come to an eventual understanding.
Look, if you wanted some really good Lannister, I'm better than you, we got it. Their army looked great. You saw a lot of red. But no, not only do you hear the raids of Castamere,
Which was cool.
Which is very cool. I like that. But the Lannister army has 2 actual lions in cages. Andrea and I were talking about it, and Andrew's like, do you think they use them? No, they don't. I know they don't. It's either in a Jaime or a Cersei chapter. They talk about how there is a lion under the rock, Casterly Rock. They go down there to see the lion, and it's actually a poor, pitiful thing. So that's just a Lannister thing, is to have lions and bring them in there. I guess it's an intimidation thing, but yeah. I'll just say this. So the Lannisters bring their lions, right? The Lannisters are also the ones that are mad they don't have a Valyrian steel sword. So I think the Lannisters bring those lions because they don't have dragons. I'm sure they pick out whatever lion roars the loudest. It just cracked me up. After that, we cut to a very well-written scene with Larys and Aegon. I mean, it was giving like Littlefinger Varys type writing. Aegon is obviously still in his bed. He has his left leg elevated. His left eye is completely closed over, and he is conscious. And they're about to bring him some more milk of the poppy, and Larys says no. And Aegon's like, hey, I want to feel better. And Larys is like, basically like, no, you need to be able to think. Okay. What Larys says to Aegon, well, that's the writing I'm talking about. I thought Laris was going to be trying to figure out how much Aegon remembered. I was wrong. What's so cool about it is Laris opens up, which I was not expecting. He straight up tells Aegon the truth. No one else has. He tells him, you will never run, but they will underestimate you, and you need to use that to your advantage. And as soon as I heard that, I immediately thought about the scene where Tyrion talks to very, very young Jon Snow and says, you're the bastard of Winterfell. And Jon is obviously bothered by it. And Tyrion says, wear it like armor and it can never hurt you. It was basically the same thing. Like, this is how it is. You can't change it. So you can either use it to your advantage and wear it like armor, or you can suffer.
Yeah.
I don't think Laris was trying to manipulate at all right then.
It was truth. He also talks about his dad calling what happened to him sorcery, and I thought that was very sad. But he didn't mention anything about his brothers. So how I feel about what happened to Lionel and Harwin was that he was going to kill his dad, but then Harwin was just collateral or damaged. Does that make it better? No, but he never said his brother at least bullied him, so that's nice.
I think you're right. I think Harwin was collateral damage. If his dad said it was sorcery, that he was born with a club foot, he didn't say it just one time.
It's very Tywin.
It is
coded.
Yeah, it is. That's why I'm seeing this Laris Tyrion parallel. And Aegon listens to it because this is the first time somebody's told him the truth. Because everybody else has been coming, yeah, you're going to be fine. You're going to be great. It'll be fine. No, it won't. Laris is the first person to tell him the truth.
He may have his own agenda, and I'm very curious what his own agenda is, but I am liking it. I don't care. You can come at me. I love it. I wanted to briefly talk about the small council meeting. They talk about trying to get the Greyjoys on their side. I think it was Grand Maester Orwell that said, maybe we should, or no, it wasn't Orwell. It was the guy next to him. I can't remember his name, but he said that we should maybe do a marriage contract between Alicent and Dalton. And I will laugh at this. I am a Greyjoy fan. I will always be a Greyjoy fan. And I am a huge Dalton Greyjoy fan. He is my pirate king. I will love him forever. I'm sorry. He is a Greyjoy. He lives on the Iron Islands. He's Ironborn. How do you think they get their wives? They're not going to do a marriage contract. That's not going to get him to join them. People probably don't know this if they haven't read the book, but they want Dalton on their side because Dalton has a lot of ships and he could stop the blockade. I'm sorry, my boy is not going to marry Alicent Hightower. There's no way. He's got his own ways of getting women, and it's not that. And Alicent was obviously appalled. And I'm just like, well, you don't want to marry Dalton Greyjoy. He's insane, but I love him. So
it gave me another parallel of when Tywin tells Cersei that she's going to marry Loras. It made me think of that because the look on Cersei's face, like Alicent looked appalled, but not quite as appalled.
I bet he's hot. I bet they picked a really hot guy to play him. That's probably it.
Hey, talk about what Aemon says to his mommy.
So he dismisses his counsel and she's trying to tell him, like, hey, all your bullies, you've done enough against them. He takes her hand and says, Mother, what have you done for this council? Honestly, I agree, Aemon. What has she done for this council? Well, she is the voice of reason, according to her. I don't necessarily agree because nobody listens to her. It's very obvious. So Aemon basically says she's dismissed and says she can go be domestic. I'm like, where? Where has she ever been domestic? I laughed so hard. I was like, where has she been domestic? You tell me. You point it out and I will believe you.
There's not a domestic thing about her. That was Aemon saying, you know what? Why don't you go and focus on your domestic duties? Because she doesn't have any. Again, when you make Cersei look like Mother of the Year.
So the riots is a big deal. Alicent and Helena go to the Sept. It's in respects for Jaehaerys, and that makes sense. Maybe they are even going to throw a little prayer in for Aegon. I don't know. And then when they leave, there are people upset because obviously they're getting food now from Rhaenyra, and they think she's better, so they're going to attack. They were throwing food at them. I mean, I think it's a great scene, but I don't like the idea of it because I don't understand how Alicent and Helena got away so fast. It didn't make sense to me. And they had a lot of Kingsguard around them. And she told them not to kill anybody. And they still cut off somebody's arm. And Alicent gets harmed during that scene. And you'll see her staring at her arm because it's literally the same spot where she cut Rhaenyra. So they're both going to have a scar right there. And that's very interesting and telling, I think, because that's also going to help her later think just about Rhaenyra, because that's all she thinks about. She loves her. And it's unfortunate that they couldn't patch it up and not have this war, but that's how it is. I understand why the Smallfolk are pissed. You see Hugh's wife asking for scraps. You see them cart a huge cart full of sheep, and they didn't even bother to cover it up. They were showing this in front of the Smallfolk. Alf Grey is like, oh, you'll feed the dragons, but you won't feed us. Like, he was pissed, and I understand why. Like, I get it. Yes, the dragons need to eat, and Vhagar eats a lot, if you want to go into that.
Vhagar eats a ton because there's a picture of Balerion when he was probably about the same size as Vhagar, and they're bringing in cattle for him to eat whole. So, yeah, Granny Vhagar eats a lot. And they didn't try to hide it from anybody. Very smart.
I noticed how in last episode that Crispy Cole was rubbing a fresh lemon on his sword, yet the Smallfolk are hungry. You know, you can blame Rhaenyra all day, every day for the blockade and the fact that the King's Landing is starving and she just let them starve. Look at what the Greens are doing. Their dragons are being fed. They're not feeding the Smallfolk, and Crispy Cole is wasting a lemon on his sword. I'm just saying.
So, I gotta be petty a little bit.
Yes.
There are plenty of people that still hung on to some hope that Aegon didn't mean to hurt his brother, which is ridiculous. Just a picture came out, and it was Aemon kissing Aegon on the forehead. And people were like, look, they're gonna make up. I'm so happy. And me and Andrew were like, no.
Kiss of death.
That's the kiss of death. Aemon leans down and is talking to Aegon, and no one else is around and could hear. And he asked him, what do you remember? And the look on Aegon's face, Aegon remembers, but he's terrified. He's like, I don't remember anything. Nothing. But it was interesting to see that interaction. So, no, if you think Aegon and Aemon are going to have some real sweet hugging it out, no.
They've never been that kind of relationship, so why would you expect it now? You know, like, exactly. Come on. I think some Team Greens are a little delusional. Just saying.
What do you rate this episode?
10 out of 10. I loved it. I mean, yeah, I got a little upset with Rhaenyra's situation at the end, but I loved it. It was a very good episode.
I really liked Sea Smoke. I didn't like the fact that they reused CGI and they changed his color and his horn pattern and the shape of his face just so that they could reuse some CGI. But I did like what they did with the dragon bond with him. And I'm going to go ahead and assume that Laenor is dead, and that's why that could happen. I found it very telling that nobody asked about Sunfire. Sunfire is laying out in the field, absolutely devastated and miserable, and no one is worried about Sunfire. I really like what Lara said. So I am going to give the episode 7.5 scales out of 10. That's pretty good for me. Well, we look forward to the next episode. We only have 2 more, so there's going to be a lot in the next 2. I look forward to seeing Vermithor, and I look forward to Caraxes finally being able to leave Harrenhal.
Hopefully, that poor boy. He just wants to go. Come on, Daddy.
He misses his wife.
Yeah, he does.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to us. This was a blast, and we will be back next week to talk more dragons and drama. Thank you. I was about to say thank you, Andrea.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. I was distracted for a second. Thank you. Hey, this is Andrea.
And this is Amanda.
And you just listened to
Girls Nerd Out.